This case study will cover the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB, which is an agency that helps consumer financial markets by making rules more effective, by consistently and fairly enforcing those rules, and by empowering consumers to take more control over their economic lives. There are 5 primary objectives that help ensure consumers to have timely and understandable information, as well as to make responsible decisions about financial transactions, to protect consumers from unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices, to reduce outdated, unnecessary, or overly burdensome regulations, to promote fair competition through consistent enforcement of federal consumer financial laws, and to help advance markets that operate transparently and facilitate access as well as innovation. Now, how did we get here? The CFPB is a byproduct of the 2008 financial crisis. Following the crisis, in 2010, President Obama signed the Dodd-Frank Act, under which the Consumer Financial Protection Act of 2010 was created. The regulation and forces to protect consumers within financial markets were then consolidated into one agency, the CFPB. The CFPB is organized under its director, Rohit Chopra. Under the director is the deputy director, who oversees the chiefs of staff and the chief operations officer. The director and deputy director collectively oversee the company's 6 primary divisions: operations, consumer response and education, external affairs, legal, supervision, enforcement and fair lending, and research, monitoring, and regulations. CFPB's primary dynamic is with the Federal Trade Commission. They work together through an interagency cooperation agreement. The agreement identifies a memorandum of understanding through which the FTC frequently consults with CFPB on rulemakings regarding the prohibition on unfair, deceptive, and abusive acts or practices, as well as other organizational practices. Through the Memorandum of Understanding, the CFPB is granted the authority to implement and enforce federal consumer financial law to ensure consumer access to markets. There are 2 recent disputes regarding the CFPB, one of which was with the Federal Reserve through the Financial Choice Act of 2017, which was initially approved by the House but died in the Senate. Now, the main purpose of the act was to relax financial industry regulations and ultimately limit CFPB's scope by preventing it from prohibiting unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. And the most recent dispute is a Supreme Court case that was decided in May of this year, whereby Community Financial Services Associations of America sued CFPB, claiming that its funding structure was illegal. However, the court ruled that the funding mechanism for CFPB, whereby Congress authorizes the Bureau to draw from the Federal Reserve System, the funds that director deems reasonably necessary to carry out the Bureau's duties, which is subject only to an inflation-adjusted cap, and it must comply with the Appropriations Clause. Now, why do we care? CFPB has had significant societal impact. To highlight just a few on this slide, there's over $20.7 billion in consumer relief from CFPB enforcement and work. Consumers have roughly $6.1 billion in yearly savings, and there are over 61.5 million users who access the CFPB database to collect information regarding financial markets, institutions, protections, and best practices. Finally, here are my sources. Thank you.